Actually, I'm just going to go with that. That's okay with you. Okay, you see my slide?
Yes.
Wonderful. So it's great to see you all tonight. Maybe it's great to see you again. And Colleen, I just want to thank you again for helping us out this whole month, letting us be a part of this awesome series and in year 2. Heroic Gardens, as you just saw, we're a nonprofit that's committed to providing free horticultural services to the veteran community in the Delaware Valley. And most recently, we're going national. Our mission is to help veterans experience the healing power of nature. So now in our 4th year, Heroic Gardens offers a number of plant and plant-based programming virtually, in person, and at the homes of veterans across the Delaware Valley. We're a year-round active organization, so we partner with the VA and local veterans multi-service centers and organizations. And quite simply, we'd love to have you volunteer with us. There's a lot of different kinds of ways that you can volunteer. We do it, like I said, year-round. We're very active right now this spring. It's a great way to honor the veteran community, and you can register by visiting our website, which is heroicgardens.org. Anybody that makes a donation tonight, if you give me your mailing address or you give it to Colleen, you'll receive this awesome packet of custom-made seeds. It's a butterfly mix, and I love this because we're talking about pollinators and saving the bees tonight. So we will send that out to you if you're interested. Okay, so let's go to our second slide here. You may or may not know, but it's, as we said on the video, it's scientifically proven that working with plants can have an incredible impact on your health. And we're talking about the decrease of symptoms of stress and anxiety and depression. And we're talking about, the overall increase of your immune system, bone strength, not to mention your cognition, your self-esteem, and your confidence. So there's a lot of positive benefits to working with plants. Essentially, you're automatically opening yourself up to receiving healing from nature. And that's whether you're conscious of it or not. And that's something that's as old as our planet. So real quick, tonight I want to run down a couple of things that you can do right now at home to continue to grow a personal connection with plants and nature. And if you say, oh, I don't have a green thumb, that's a myth. And I don't believe that, because everybody does. So here are some actions that you can take with your own personal healing process. And I think right now more than ever, we all need it. So first of all, take a walk. It's actually been prescribed by physicians that are working with patients. This is also called forest bathing. We did it actually this past Sunday in Swarthmore College. It's known as Shinrin-yoku, and it originated in the 1980s in Japan officially. Concept is simple. You just leave all of your technology, anything that is a distraction at home, get out into the forest and be with the trees, who the Native Americans called the standing people. Be with the landscape, just breathe. It's not a sprint, it's not a hike, it's just you existing in nature. And it really is allowing yourself to absorb oxygen and other important nutrients that nature wants you to have. The second thing is, and it may seem obvious, but behind me, grow something. Like I said, there's no such thing as a brown thumb. And if you don't have an indoor space or an outdoor space, you certainly can do it indoors. There's many plants that will benefit you as well as you benefiting them from growing inside. They serve as air filters for your lungs. For example, way in the back there, you can see, maybe you can see it. I have a spider plant, and NASA has actually identified the spider plant as one of the top 10 air purifiers that they've actually taken to Mars with them. So, it's not only like, is it beautiful and easy to care for, but it's actually helping you with your breathing. And finally, the last thing I want to say is open your curtains. I don't even have any curtains, so there's that. But the sun is providing vitamin D, and especially as we start to get into the spring and summer hours, we have more sun. And so that is an opportunity to fill your indoor space with the gift that the sun has to offer. So again, I just want to thank Colleen. It's great to have Kara tonight. It's good to see Libby. And you can learn more by visiting us at heroicgardens.org, following us on Instagram at Heroic Gardens. And thanks again for having us.
Thank you so much, Collie. I always enjoy listening to you talk about what you do. I can tell how much you love doing that, and so great. Very excited to, we have one more joining us this evening. Welcome, Caesar. Very excited to have Kara Lehmann. So from the first time I met her at the Ambler Farmers Market, I thought she was amazing. I was like, this woman makes her own skincare products by hand, and she grows the items in her garden. I was like, this is just so amazing. So with us tonight is Kara Lehmann. She's the founder of Kara Jo Skincare. It's organic and eco-friendly skincare products, kind of like deodorant, soap, shampoo, lip balm, also seasonal honey. Tonight, Kara is going to discuss what Save the Bees really means and how we can effectively support pollinators and plant habitat. She'll also teach us how to harvest native and invasive medicinal plant species to create your very own healing infusion. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to Kara Lehmann. Thanks, Kara.
Yes, Colleen, thanks. Yeah, Colleen and I we were just starting out our businesses next to each other at Ambler Farmers Market. So it's been fun to share this journey with you, Colleen.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so let me see, let me get this thing going here. And Colleen, thank you so much for sharing all of that. I mean, could this be a better match? I don't think so. I think this is going to be an awesome night. Yeah. So here we go. So this is just what Save the Bees really means. And we hear this all the time, and I actually just learned this, I don't know, probably about a year ago. And I've been trying to really spread the word as much as possible. Because there's just like a lot of misunderstanding out there. So thank you, Colleen. Thank you, Collie. My name, like Colleen said, was Kara Lehmann. And, when I found out what Save the Bees really means, I was a little bit heartbroken. I was like a little bit devastated. Because I think we think idealistically about honeybees, and especially beekeepers as being a beekeeper, like, it's a pretty cool thing that we do, and people really kind of glorify it. But I think that we need to uncover the mistruths about this. And the more we know, the better we understand. And then the better off we are. So here we go. This is my small business. It's Kara Jo Skincare and Bee Farm. We kind of extended the bee farm as we grew our beekeeping. I've been doing this skincare since 2014. I had acne my entire life. It felt like my entire life. And then I was an adult and I was like, why do I still have acne? I thought this was like a teenage thing. And I tried all kinds of different things and nothing worked for years and years and years. So I just decided to start trying stuff on my own. And I really did start, but before I was a beekeeper, I learned about the power of honey, the antibacterial power of honey that really helped with acne. So I started there buying all kinds of crazy honey products. And then I started making my own stuff. And I actually am a 10th grade English teacher at Wissahickon High School. I've been there for 18 years. So I have this huge population of teachers. There's like over 100 teachers. I don't even know how many there are. And so I started making things and just testing them and giving samples out to people. I didn't even know why. I was just like, I guess if I'm making this, I might as well get feedback on it. and feedback ended up being everything. And I started kind of changing things to what all different kinds of people, all different kinds of skins liked. And this kind of just took off. So we were buying a lot of honey from a local farm. And I'd always been interested in beekeeping. I found out later my grandfather was a beekeeper, but I don't really remember him being a beekeeper, but maybe subconsciously I remember that as a child, but like I don't have an active memory of it. So I had always told my husband that I was really interested. Someday I want to be a beekeeper. So we were buying all this honey. I had this skincare business, and he said, so we're going to beekeep, right, Karen? I was like, we're going to beekeep? Okay, I guess so. So we started taking classes, and we joined Montgomery County Beekeepers Association, and we got really involved in it. We got hives, and it just started growing. And we, every month I'm learning from like the latest bee research from these amazing bee scientists out of all of these universities. And so it's really like the forefront of bee science that I'm getting my information from. So that's a lot of this stuff is what I'm sharing with you tonight. And so this picture to the left is our beehives. We were living in Ambler. It was really Horsham, but it was Ambler mailing address. And in September, we got hit by Hurricane Ida. We got flooded out. We got hit by a tornado. Luckily, we had moved 20 hives the night before. And we put them on a trailer, and where you're seeing these beehives, a tornado ripped through and would have taken out all of the hives and everything. It would have just been decimated. So thank God that we did that. And now we are out in Sellersville, but it's just a reminder of how our planet is changing rapidly and how vulnerable we are to that. We're living in Horsham, Pennsylvania, and we get devastated by flood and a hurricane and a tornado. And you wake up in the morning and you have to leave, and you just have to leave your home, and we're never returning to it. But we're on a farm now, everything, we're regaining stability. But so I have Cara Jo Skincare and Bee Farm. The other pictures of with my husband, because I work high school, he's really the head beekeeper. And we have hives in different places. So we're both beekeeping, but he's really he's the man behind the woman, I'll call him. I'm sure he would love to be called that. So like Colleen said, we have an organic and eco-friendly skincare business, and I try to grow as much. We try to keep it as local as we possibly can. There are ingredients that we can't keep local just because nobody grows coconut trees around here, and there's certain oils. We practice organic growing practices and use organic ingredients. We have a jar return program. I'm starting to make candles with like reused jars. If I could find local packaging, that would be awesome. But the whole kind of point of this talk is also something I learned as a beekeeper is you have to live in the world you're given. It's not about being perfect. It's about just, if we can all do a little bit better, we can make a big impact. So we also grow season. Yeah, right. I mean, that's really what it is. So we also have seasonal honey. So a lot of beekeepers, they'll collect, like if you ever drive by a beehive, like I'll go back here, like you might see hives stacked up so high, and we are harvesting the honey seasonally. So spring we harvest, summer we harvest, fall we harvest. So we have seasonal honey, and then we practice regenerative practices, which is kind of what tonight's about, a little bit. So we have chickens, and that's a big restorative practice. We compost restoratively. So we have that mentality. And then I also said, I thought this was good. So to start thinking of your property, not as, we have these gardens, right? And we think of what are we going to plant in the gardens, but start thinking of your property as everything's a garden. The whole property is a garden. And that's like a really kind of regenerative thought process, the grasses you plant, the trees you plant, what we bring in, and also what we try to combat, like on a bigger scale. So thinking broader than just gardens. And then we just work with, these are just some of them I wanted to give, we work with amazing people and businesses, and these are just some of them. We sell our honey through farms, local farms, and we're also going to start selling like garlic and hot honey that are grown with these farms. Aloha Smoothie and Ambler, if you know them, they use our honey, they sell our honey. Sorrentino Pasta. Dave's Backyard Farm in Elkins Park is a local and organic little shop. Dave's amazing. He sells our dish soap and our shampoo and our soaps. And then my husband is in the beer industry. He works for Forest and Maine, but we sell our honey to breweries. So Forest and Maine's in Ambler, Threes Brewing is in Brooklyn. Second District is a Philly brewery. And honey is a very simple sugar. So honey is used in brewing because it gives yeast an easy sugar that they can consume and easily turn into alcohol. So like a lot of honey sales actually go to breweries, believe it or not. And then we also have a podcast. We talk about beekeeping, but we also talk about stuff that we're going to talk about tonight. So let's get to it. What does Save the Bees really mean? So Apis mellifera, which is the honeybee, originated in Asia. They are not native to the United States, and they came over in the 1600s. So I have always heard, honeybees, they're not native, but they're not invasive. But science is coming out to say that that's not always the case. So honeybees are kept, right? They're agriculture. Honeybees are threatened, just basically like we're all really kind of threatened at this point. They're threatened by pesticides. They're threatened by human growth, which creates a lack of habitat for them. Even just, the tornado that ripped through our area totally decimated a lot of the habitat. I lived on the corner of like Limekiln and Tennis. I don't know if you guys know where that is, like in Horsham, but there was this huge, beautiful meadow, and they wiped it out, and they're building big houses. But just thinking about the habitat loss just for that meadow, like all of the insects that live there, and now where are they going to go? And now they're competing for other resources. Beekeepers reported last year that across the United States, 45.5% of their managed honeybee colonies were lost from April 2020 to April 2021. This is because of all of those reasons, but also because of the honeybee's number one enemy, which is the Varroa destructor mite. It carries 20 known different contagious viruses and pathogens. So that's just what we know of. Okay. So the honeybees, right? They came from, I think this was my last slide. They came from Asia, and the Varroa mite also lives in Asia. It's an Asian pest, right? And, but the honeybee and the Varroa mite evolved together. So the honeybee could withstand the Varroa mite, and they just live kind of together. But when the honeybee came over to the United States, there was no Varroa mite in the United States. So the honeybees didn't have this problem. They didn't have this parasite, and they were able to, I talked to older beekeepers, and beekeeping was just a breeze. And since the Varroa mite came over in 1987, it really has been an enemy to the honeybee. But honeybees are managed, right? So as a beekeeper, I can, I have certain practices. We practice organically. There's no such thing as organic honey. So if you ever see anything that's like organic honey, that's a farce. But there are organic practices that you can use. So honeybees aren't endangered. They're threatened, but they're not endangered. So because of this varroa mite, honeybees not properly managed and beekeepers with poor beekeeping practices, science is showing that they can spread these pathogens and these viruses to native bees and pollinators. So good beekeeping practices are really more important now than ever. We always like to say, we don't need more beekeepers. My dogs are just gonna bark, so. We don't need more beekeepers. We need better beekeepers, right? It's kind of becoming this like trendy thing. And that's pretty frustrating because we don't need a whole bunch of beekeepers. We just need better beekeepers. So if Save the Bees isn't about honeybees, who's it about? Well, it's about native bees. Okay. We have in Pennsylvania alone, we have over 400 species of native bees. And I mean, you don't even get to see a lot of these, right? So some that you usually do see are like the bumblebee, the mason bee, the carpenter bee. And so this is, why do they need saving? Well, first of all, they're not managed, right? So I'm managing my bees. I'm making sure I'm taking care of their diseases, and I'm, in there doing different things. But solitary bees you can't manage them really. Although there is a little bit, I'll tell you a little bit more about that. Here's a little stat. Since World War II, we've lost 97% of our wildflower meadows. So that's another reason, like we're leaving these bees with less and very little natural habitat. And meadows are the beginning of forests, right? It's the first step of forests. So meadows beget forests. So these native bees have less resources, just like honeybees, but even more so, we'll talk about it. Habitat loss, growth in human population, same thing. Pesticides, but also invasive plants. So invasive plants rapidly outcompete native plants. So they're like winning the battle. Also these invasive insects. So we here where we moved, we live in Sellersville, where we moved, there were in our bee yard, there were all of these praying mantises, huge praying mantises. And so you just think, oh, cool, praying mantises. And they were like everywhere. One day I looked down, I was beekeeping, and there was a huge praying mantis eating a bee, just like sucking the head of a bee. It was so cool. But then we realized they were invasive praying mantises. So they're just out competing and eating insects. So they're just making it harder for native bees to survive. Some bumblebee populations have declined over 95% in present day. And it's hard for scientists to track the majority of insect population decline rates. As you can imagine, they're insects, right? It's a hard thing to track. So native bees are the ones that's saving because they're more vulnerable to these invasive species. People don't realize they plant their gardens and they're planting whatever they get at Home Depot or even, good nurseries, but they're not native and even possibly invasive species. And then birds eat the seeds and then they poop them out and they're just getting spread, and they're really, that's why they're called invasive. But there is a variety of things that you can do. You don't need to be a beekeeper. People always come up to me and they say, oh, we need more people like you. And I said, actually, we don't. Like I said, we don't need so many beekeepers. If you looked, I just saw recently a map of what is it? Southeast Pennsylvania, and there are so many beekeepers, which again, I'm a beekeeper. I'm not trying to disparage beekeepers, but I just think that we need to really look at the truth of things. Again, I'm not trying to glorify this thing. We really need to look at what's going on and, you know, are we having good practices? And I say to people, we don't need more beekeepers. We need more people like non-beekeepers to do these simple things that we're going to talk about tonight that can really make a difference. So the first thing is something I just learned about, and it's really awesome. We just started doing this, and it's gaining in popularity. So like I said, it's hard to, I think I just said earlier that you can't really keep solitary bees, but I'm going to just go back on what I just said, because you can kind of keep mason bees. It's not, and it's a great thing to do. It's not nearly, I mean, it's like a fraction of what beekeeping is. So mason bees are, there's native and non-native bees, mason bees. But like I said, we're just living in the world we're given. So we do want to promote pollinators of all sorts, just in responsible ways. So I'm sure you've seen this, right? Like these solitary bee homes. Mason bees are like these tiny little bees. They're so cute. And actually there's the last slide here. There's one of the native mason bees is the blue orchard native mason bee, which is like such a cool looking. They're just different colors. So we bought these cocoons, and I'll give you this contact information in a moment. We bought these cocoons from a local guy who's really getting into it. And actually Penn State Extension, a scientist for Penn State, is reaching out to him because they want to know more about this and they want to spread the word. So we went over to his house and we had no idea what to expect. We just thought we were kind of getting these tubes. He has all of these cocoons. So if you look here, like these are all mason bee cocoons, right? And he light tests them to make sure that they're viable. He gives you the right amount of female versus male. And you keep them in the fridge over winter because that's like their natural habitat, right? And then as it starts to get warm, you take them out and you put them, like, you can really do whatever you want, but he taught us just to put them in these like takeout containers and then cut these holes over here in the side so that when they hatch, they can fly out. And they do all of their work in May and June. And it's basically, you know, just procreate. We're going to have our babies and we're going to fill these tubes up and we're going to give them lots of pollen and put that mud in there. And then basically by June, they're sealed up. And then if I'm understanding correctly, it takes them all the way till October to be fully developed, to have their cocoon and be ready to kind of be pulled out. I'll tell you in a second, but pulled out and like put back in the fridge. So step one, it's super simple. Step one is just let them hatch. And then step two is, where's my mouse? Here it is. You just need to give them housing. But we kind of already, this is like a popular thing. You might already have this at your house. So mason bees specifically get an 8mm like reed, right? So we just like bought these 8mm reeds, and you see all of these different sizes. These are for all different solitary bees. So, you know, if you buy those houses and they have all different sizes, they can house all different kinds of, not even bees, just pollinators, wasps, all kinds of things. But mason bees specifically get 8mm diameter, and they emerge when the weather is like consistently 50 to 55 degrees. And then they do their work for like 2 months. You need to put the house about 100 yards from flowers because they don't really fly more than 100 yards. And they won't really fly more than 300 yards. So you have to strategically put the house like near where they can pollinate. And then again, they pollinate and they nest for 6 to 12 weeks and then they close up shop. So it's important, and we'll talk about this, but it's important to choose plants. You know, if you want to do this, you need to have a variety of plants.
That's what I was going to ask you. What plants do you recommend?
We'll talk about some different
Okay.
I'll get into that. Yeah. And you also want a variety of plants, because I might talk about this later, but different plants have different amino acids. So you want to give them like a variety of amino acids so that it can support their health, which you don't even need to worry about. Just like a variety of plants that are blooming is good. So this guy is, he is an interesting fellow. His name is Pepper Pizzino. He might still, if you're interested in this, it's super simple. Like that's all we did. Okay. And that's all you really need to do. He is on Facebook. I looked him up. His name is I searched Pepper Pizzino. But his thing is Pepperman.
Okay.
He might still have them, and he will walk you through. The man loves to talk. He'll walk you through the whole thing and tell you exactly what you need to do. But even if you're thinking for next year, he's a really good resource for doing it. And he's super passionate about it. And he knows like everything about it. You can ask him anything. So that's just like one idea if you're interested in doing that. And even just putting out solitary bee homes is a great idea. Somebody sent it to me the other day. They had it on the ground. I would put them up, away from predators, but make sure that you're putting them close to flowers.
Okay.
Also, by the way,
seen
like
them around, but I didn't know how to use them or where to put them.
Just put them up. You don't even really need, you know what I mean? Even if you're not doing mason bees, just put them up.
Yeah.
Put them up. And we had some in our other house, and the first year nothing came, and we just left it up, and then they just fill up.
Okay.
So, I mean, he takes out the tubes and soaks them in water and takes out, but you could just even leave them,
Okay.
So what else can you do? So you can do that. But here we get into the plants, and this is really, I found this to be really fascinating. So now these are animals, because I thought that this was a good teaching tool just for you to kind of understand this, but well, we'll just talk about in general what generalists and specialists are, and then we can equate it to insects. So generalists are, raccoons and rats are great examples of generalists. So they have a broad niche. They're adaptable to so many different environments. Just like think about, raccoons, they're living in everywhere, right? They're living in like bothering people in their homes, and they're living in the wild. Rats, I mean, they are terrorizing New York City. You go out and they're all over the place. So they're super adaptable. And because of that, they're less likely to become extinct. Generalists in general, this is because they can also use a variety of resources. So they can eat whatever's in front of them. They kind of just, raccoons eat trash, but they can also eat berries, right? So they can they'll go and they'll eat whatever. So when conditions change, which we know they are rapidly changing, these generalists have an advantage. Honeybees are generalists. Specialists have a smaller niche, a more narrow niche. So if you think about what is this? A koala bear and a panda bear, they eat bamboo. That's what they eat. So you don't have bamboo, they're not going to be able to eat, they're not going to be able to live, and they're going to die. And so they have specialized needs. And so they're more likely to become extinct as resources become more limited. They're more affected by changing in the environment, and they have a disadvantage to our changing environment. The majority of native pollinators are specialists. Okay. So like a real quick example, we went to Iceland, and the puffin, you guys know, like the puffin bird, so cute. They're so cute. And the puffin bird eats a specific fish, and that specific fish lives in a specific temperature of water. And so the puffins have evolved. So this is the thing about like specialists, they evolve with their food source. Okay. So the puffins know they're going to eat this fish, and this is the fish they eat, and this is where they find it. Well, as the ocean temperatures rise, these fish can't live in the same place anymore. So the fish are leaving, and the puffins, because they have evolved forever and ever and ever, they don't know. There could be another fish available to them, but they don't know that that other fish is even available to them, right? So if as soon as that population of fish leave permanently, the puffin will go extinct because they don't know, even if there's another viable source, they don't know that it is viable. So these native pollinators, a lot of them even hatch as as native plants bloom, and this is their source. And even if there's butterfly bushes aren't actually native. So let's say there's a butterfly bush, and butterfly bushes, they bloom for months and they're great pollen source and nectar source, but they're not native. So these native pollinators, even though there's this great source for them, they don't know and they won't go to it. So they need specialists, need native plants. So for example, one that everybody knows is monarchs, right? So we all know that well, maybe we know, but like the general population, I feel like this is, monarch caterpillars only eat milkweed, right? So the same thing, they have evolved with milkweed. When the milkweed comes up, the monarchs, they have their flights, and they're going and they're finding the milkweed and they're laying their eggs, and their eggs can only be viable on the milkweed. So monarch caterpillars are specialists. Monarch adult butterflies are actually generalists, and they'll travel to all different kinds of sources. Is this making sense to you guys? By the way, if you need to unmute and stop and ask me questions or comment, feel free.
This is great. I never knew that.
I know, right? So this was really, it was a big shift for me. Because I was like, oh no, am I doing more harm than, like, I thought I was doing this good thing, right? And then I was like, am I doing more harm than good? But it really is about practicing responsibly and understanding. So, sharing this information with as many people. So the number one, what you can do, you don't want to keep mason bees, you don't want to put up solitary bee houses. Okay, plant native plants. It's really that simple. And promote the growth of native plants. So some types of plants, like we're going to talk about witch hazel tonight. Witch hazel has native species, but they also have invasive species. So if you're planting species, plant native plants, and there's so many to choose from. And if you're trying to identify and combat and rip up invasive plants, know, which is which. So like, how can you even figure that out? Because it can get kind of overwhelming. But this is just, it can be fun, just kind of learning what's around you. It doesn't have to be this overwhelming thing. So one of my favorite things to do, it's so fun, especially as we're in this new place, and as things are blooming, there is an app, and there's all different kinds of apps, but this is the app I use, and it's free. It's called Seek. It's by iNaturalist. And what you do, you have to be connected to the internet to do it, but you just zoom, you open up the app, and it's like a camera, and you just literally hover over the plant, and it tells you what kind of plant it is. And then you can do a Google search and see, is it invasive? Is it native? So it's just fun to try to figure things out. And sometimes it's like finicky, and then you go back and it works. But Seek is really great. Another thing that you can do is visit native nurseries. We have so many native nurseries around here, and people that work in native nurseries, I say often that, like, they get along better with plants than they do with people, but they love to talk about plants. So we just went to Pittsburgh this past weekend, and we were talking about a lot of this stuff, and our friends had no native nurseries near them. So here's just a list of, and these are all native nurseries that I know of or people have told me about. If you want to take a picture of this or jot these down, these are local native nurseries, and they only sell native plants. So you show up at that nursery, anything you buy is guaranteed native. And these, again, all kinds of questions. You can ask them all kinds of questions. They'll talk to you all day long about it. Also, we do more and more stuff online now. There's all kinds of native nurseries. You can get them shipped to you. I only wanted to give you the one that I've had experience with, because I don't know other ones, but Native Nurseries has been really good. And you can just Google it, but I bought stuff from Native Nurseries and I was very, very happy. Their prices were good and I was very happy with what I got. I actually got button bushes, which is this middle picture. So when you plant, consider what you're planting. So flowers are great, right? Plant flowers. But when people say save the bees, they're always like plant wildflowers, but consider the yield of what you're planting. So flowers are great. Bushes are better, because you can even see in the middle how many blooms are on that. And then trees, think about a tree in full bloom, how many pollinators that's supporting. And then promote flowering across seasons. So early spring, a lot of times there's not a lot blooming. So, consider what can you plant in the early spring. First of all, it's just good for your soul. Am I right, Collie? Like, we just have these, the sooner we can get these plants blooming and we can see them and we can have this connection with them, we're coming out of winter. That's what we want, right? So early spring is really important, and late fall is really important because there's not a lot blooming. So it's good for us, but we also want to support these pollinators. The dearth is when there's not a lot of nectar flow, and that's happening like July, August, because there's not a lot blooming. And it's also so hot that plants are like holding on to their nectar. So planting plants that bloom in any of those seasons, like May, June, things are blooming. You don't need, like, it's great to plant then, but like that's an easy season. Pollinators are full. But these other months, like early spring, July, August, and then, late fall, like goldenrod is great in the fall, aster is great in the fall, that kind of stuff. So I'm throwing a lot of information in. It might be like, oh my God, wow, am I even going to keep track of this? So these are all, if you want to take a snapshot of this also, these are all books that have been amazing resources to me. And I just go to them. You don't have to memorize this stuff, right? Like, these are just on my coffee table and I go and I look at them and I bring these books to nurseries with me. So a lot of these are native plants. So Colleen, to answer your question from earlier, this last one, Garden Plants for Honeybees by Peter Lintner. Okay. He was an amazing bee scientist. I actually heard him talk one time. He was awesome. And he went to DuPont and he ran all of these like, studies, like collecting pollen, collecting nectar. And he put together a book from, I think it goes from February. It might even go all the way till November, month by month, what plants to plant. He has non-native species in there, but he tells you what's native, what's not. So I've even brought that to the nursery with me. Like, okay, what am I getting? How are we doing this thing?
I like that he broke it down like month by month.
It's great. And it also tells you, like, I mean, you might not care about this as much as like people that are beekeepers do, but it tells you like how much, is it a great nectar source? Is it a great pollen source? So all that kind of stuff.
Nice.
All right. So we're planting plants, right? And like, we've identified plants. So it's not just about, it's just identify. I would say step one, go outside and figure out what the heck is growing, because there's even things growing in your grass and like these weeds, like what are they? And do you maybe even want to allow them to grow? Just kind of educate yourself. We take like nature walks around, and things are constantly growing, but let's make something with them, right? Let's do something cool with them. So a lot of plants have medicinal properties. Native and invasive plants have medicinal properties. So the number one, and you can they're medicinal because you eat them, right? You ingest them or you drink them, or you can apply them to your skin. So the number one rule with plants is plants treat individual people, not symptoms overall. So everybody's different. There's different kind of body types and different kinds of things. So it's very specific to the person. So that's just like people are like, plant medicine, but it's not just like a panacea overall. Also, plants are generally proactive and not reactive. However, the good news is plants have an amazing effect on skin cells, and I have seen plants be very reactive to skin conditions. So that's what we're going to talk about. So let's take these plants, right? We're planting native plants, but there's going to be invasive plants at your house. It's just, there is. So how can we take all of these plants and make something with them? So here is, here's like just a little thing that you can make. And look, there's a lot of plants here I listed. This might be too many. They offer a variety of medicine, I would say, but you could pick and choose. And we'll just kind of go through each one, but it's a healing infusion for like wounds, cuts, scrapes, minor burns, irritation in skin, and like bites or stings even. So you planted these plants, right? And they're growing. When to pick them? And I'm actually going to change this a little bit because I meant to change it, but I didn't. So pick it when it all depends on the plant. But you want to pick it just as it's bloomed, as it's like full bloom. So if you can think of like just even this plant right here, like right when it reaches open full bloom, pick it. Okay. But it always depends on the parts that you're using. So this is the case. There's essential oils in some plants, not all plants have essential oils, which attract the pollinators. So right when it's at its full expression of bloom, it's right at the full expression of like, these are my essential oils, smell me, come see me, you want me. And that's when you want to take it. And really to make these infusions, you don't need a lot of plant. So you can pick plant, you can leave plant for the pollinators. It can totally be a, what is that? Symbiotic relationship. Go around, like if there's mint or like lemon balm, walk by, taste the plant. How does it taste today? How's it taste tomorrow? Is it stronger? Like when is it stronger? When is it like, oh, wow, this is strong. I'm going to pick it. Right. So play around with it. Have fun with it. Rub it between your fingers. It doesn't have to be this like serious thing. And again, I just identified what we have. And then I was like, ooh, I identified it. I looked it up in a book and I was like, oh, I can make this with this, right? It wasn't like, okay, I want to make this and I have to learn about this plant and then I'm going to plant this plant. It's just like, what's around me and what properties do these plants have? Because even things that you don't think are going to have any benefit, they're amazing. It's amazing. It makes you like fall in love with everything around you. So every plant is different, right? So I think it's really important to use quality resources, because when I look things up on Google, one site says one thing, another site says another thing. So here are some really good resources for it. Here's some websites. David Winston's amazing herbalist. He also sells like great herbal products. Herb Mentor is a database that I buy into. I think it's like $75 a year, and it has amazing resources and like classes you can take and all kind, like they have like videos and, like a podcast all about herbs. Like I started giving my dogs herbs because they had like veterinarians come in and talk about that. And then there's 2 books that I just am constantly referring to that I learned when I did like yoga teacher training, because like herb medicine is totally a part of that. So here's our thing. So witch hazel, great early nectar source. You might have it. If you don't, it's a great thing to plant. Again, make sure that it's native. You can take its bark, you can take its leaves. It's astringent, so it tones and strengthens the tissues that are like, if you have a wound, it helps restore the natural function of cells. It reduces inflammation. You can cut off like a little twig of it, and you can chop up the twig, or you can like scrape off the bark. But even if it's like a new twig, you can just chop it up in little pieces and throw it in. So you could just make you could just throw that in oil, right? Broadleaf plantain, every single person has this in their yard. I guarantee it.
That looks really familiar.
Yes, you have it. And so it's a great pollen source from April to September. And we probably want to kill this thing. It's amazing. I use its leaves all the time. If you do get stung by a pollinator, you take a leaf, you chew it up, get it all good and saliva-y, and then you can put it on like a poultice, like on your arm, and it draws out the sting and it draws out the swelling.
Wow.
Yeah, but you can just cut this up, throw it in. It prevents bacterial growth. Echinacea. I just read that echinacea doesn't really grow in the wild, so let's plant more echinacea and let those birds take it all over the place. It's a summer plant for pollinators. You can harvest the whole plant. It's cooling, so wounds like inflammation and bacteria, it can help with that. It can also remove the sting from like spider bites, insect bites, and it helps with infection. We know it's antimicrobial. People like love to take echinacea when they're sick. And then Multiflora Rose is the biggest pain in the butt ever. It is invasive. It is awful. It grows everywhere. It is thorny, but it's around. So let's use it. The peak bloom is in June. You can use its petals, its rose hips, its leaves. You just need to kind of be careful because it'll get you. But the great thing about harvesting invasives is you're removing it and you're using it. It also is an astringent. It helps cells form back together and pull back together, and then it decreases like excessive secretions like oozing and that kind of stuff. So you dry your herbs, right? You cut them, you put them in a cool, dark place with their circulation. Sometimes I run a fan. You don't want to jar them too soon, especially flower petals, because they easily mold. So I've hung them. Well, actually, I'll get to that in the next one because I'll show you a picture. But so you just kind of, I'll show you how to do it. But if you do roots, if you ever pull roots, you want to cut roots up first, because if you let roots dry and then you try to cut them up, you like literally need like a table saw to like cut them, because they are so hard once all of the moisture comes out of them. Yeah, so I've created screens like this and just let them dry here, or again, cool, dark. Hopefully there's some airflow just to kind of get them drying. But I've tried this. I've tried hanging them because, you know, everybody likes to hang them and they look pretty. The best thing I found is like those, we just got one, like those mesh hanging racks, because they're just all contained and it's like in one thing, but there's lots of different ways that you can do it. Just don't jar them too soon. If you put them in a jar, you want to make sure that you like kind of burp them and you give them air and you let the air flow through, because they'll mold. And then you garble them, which is kind of, you take a screen and you kind of pick them all out and you let them, you take them, you like break them down. You just want to make sure they're not too fine, and you'll see why in a second. And then jojoba oil, which is closest to the skin's natural sebum. It's natural fatty acid. It's great for your skin. It's great for wounds. So you take these things, you cover the herbs. So you take like 1 ounce of herbs, but you can do more. But just know that some of the oil will be soaked up in the herbs. and you cover it with 5 ounces of oil, and then you label it. Sometimes I'm like, I don't need to label this. I know what it is. No, label it, put the date on it because you're going to forget, I promise. Leave it for like 2 to 3 weeks in a warm, dark place so the sunlight can't break it down. And then the key to this whole thing is shake it. Shake it, shake it, shake it, shake it, agitate it, because that's really what's helping the plant matter break down and get in and infuse into the oils. And then you strain it. But this is why you don't want to get the plant matter too fine when you harvest it, and kind of like, it's gonna, when it dries, you're gonna like garble it, which is just kind of like break it down and get it off the stem and stuff. But if it's too fine, it's not gonna strain well, and it's gonna get into your oil. So you just kind of want to be careful about that. And then rub it all over. Rub it all over. Go ahead. What? Yeah, go ahead. Yes, I have one more slide left.
Awesome.
Okay.
I figured you're close to the end.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Okay.
So we have lots of oil. I do lots of oil infusions. The one thing, just a heads up about skincare, like soap, a lot of people do a lot of infusions in soap, but soap washes off your skin right away. So there can be healing properties to soap, but if you're really looking for plant infusions and that kind of stuff, you're going to want to put in oils, things that soak into your body. So just start with plants, start slow, learn as you go. Don't worry, have fun with it. Don't make it a big deal. And yeah, just fall in love with it and have a good time. So that's it.
Love it. This is great. Oh, thank you so much. Such great information, a lot of great information and resources.
Yeah. Those are all good resources. And if you start nowhere else, just take the Seek app and learn what's around you. That's a great place to start.
Gonna download it as soon as we get off here.
Yeah, it's fun. Super fun.
Does anyone have any questions?
Actually, a couple of things, Kara. I just wanted to just mention, while we don't need more backyard beekeepers, we definitely need more commercial beekeepers. Commercial beekeepers have been in decline for a very long time. Right after World War II in the United States, there were 6.1 million colonies, and these are commercial beekeepers, not counting backyard beekeepers. At the end of 2021, it was 2.7 million. So we lost all that amount. And to give you a perspective on that, in order to properly pollinate, like starting from California, the almonds, and as you get toward the East Coast, as you're going through berries and stuff, and you get into oranges and so on, that requires 2.1 million hives to do that. So we're slowly getting to the point where we're going to run out of bees to do all major pollination. And unfortunately, there's no way to manually pollinate on that large scale. So it's definitely something. And then the biggest thing is obviously the reason it's such a great collapse is that most commercial beekeepers lose anywhere from 40 to 80% of their hives during the year, because as they're going from one monoculture crop to another, because of the massive use of pesticides and herbicides and all that, they're basically dying as they get to the other end of the country, and then the next year they got to start all over again, more or less, and they just don't have enough. The other point I just wanted to make, that there is one other aspect of Save the Bees that I don't know if you looked into it or saw. There are areas where saving the honeybee is actually really crucial. For example, in Hawaii, the honeybee represents 80% of their crop for pollination. When something happens in Hawaii, like on the Big Island, with the volcano erupts and stuff, and there's a large die-off. In Hawaii, you cannot import bees. So they can't bring in bees from the mainland to Hawaii. So whatever bees they have, they need to basically make sure that they thrive. And they actually are encouraging more backyard beekeepers, because really in Hawaii, there's not really a lot of commercial beekeepers. And that is kind of like a major factor. But yeah, it's kind of really important. And all the points that you've said about, all these various pollinators, like for example, where I am at when I came to the property I'm on, first thing I did is I planted milkweed, and I put up some little housing for solitary bees. And I also had some hives. And so it's true, it's just to keep planting. And the other thing I tell people, if you're not sure what to plant herbs, because when you plant herbs, like basil, for example, every time I see them bloom, the bees are just on it like crazy. But yeah, but that was very good. Thank you very much for your presentation.
Yeah,
Thank you
thanks for your input. Yeah, this was more about what can we do at a local level. People feel like they need to become beekeepers, and and it's, you plant native plants and native pollinators show up. So, how can we really support this native population over, we need to support pollinators overall. And native is really the most supportive to our ecosystem and regaining some sort of balance in the ecosystem.
That's great.
So.
I feel like we have like tools to walk away that we can start tomorrow by
Great.
in our garden, which is
Great.
what I was hoping for. So thank you.
Yeah, just throw some wildflower mixes out, start a little meadow.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Yes, there you go, Collie. Donate.
You got the seeds. Yes, if you donate to Heroic Gardens, just click on their website on the donate page, and send me or Collie your address. She'll send you a pack of seeds. But I'm gonna, since it's 8:09, we're gonna wrap it up. And I thank you again for everyone who was with us this evening. I do have the recording if anyone wants to access that as well. All right, have a great evening.
Thanks, Colleen.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Collie.
Thank
Bye,
you.
Thank
folks.
you.
Good week.
Bye-bye, you too.